My, oh my, oh my. The window's open. Noise is going to get in. There's all sorts of violence and buffoonery occurring out there. We're just going to have to sleep in the bed we've made on that one. Also, I'm wearing a hat. So now I've got that out of the way. No Time to Die is a film directed by Cary Joji Fukunaga. It isn't very good. There's something that's hugely frustrating about films like this. All told, they probably set the company that makes them back by about $500 million. There is no excuse for something that costs that much to fall at hurdles this small. We're talking fundamentals, and those fundamentals are the things that we're going to be discussing in this video. I mean, how can these films have the best actors, the best sets, the best visual effects, but they can't get the best writing? Is it just that writing's profoundly hard? I hope that I can demonstrate through this video that the kind of things that we're swinging and missing in this environment aren't difficult to understand. Now, this might be difficult to imagine, but there was a time before the MCU. Arguably one of the very first sort of big world-dominating franchises was the James Bond franchise. I neither know nor care how many James Bond films there are. All we know is that there are seagulls outside screaming. All we need to know is there is information that we bring to a James Bond film which influences the way that we experience James Bond films. Those things are the tropes or the cliches that we anticipate seeing in the films. Now, with that information in mind, let's take a look at No Time to Die. The scene that we're going to be looking at, it comes towards the end of the film, and it is a staple of a Bond film. It's the henchman fight. Something that we've got to remember about the henchmen is that in a good film, they will be built up to be seen as incredibly dangerous towards Bond, whether that's physical strength or like ruthlessness or like being wily, whatever it would have to be to make sure the audience understands that Bond is at risk. Consequently, when this henchman is defeated against all odds, the audience feels a great amount of catharsis. That is the device that's being exploited by the filmmakers. Building the danger, having Bond overcome that danger, experience the positive feelings that come from the release of tension.
She always did enjoy a good squeeze.
The scene that we're looking at in No Time to Die comes at the tail end of a wanna. It's one continuous shot designed to sort of heighten tension. At the very end of that, building tension, Bond gets ambushed by the main henchman. Bond is completely defeated, he's fought his hardest, but he's on the ropes. All hope seems lost. He's at complete disadvantage to the main henchman, but it is at that point where we feel like all hope is lost that the pendulum starts to swing back in Bond's favour. He uses his gadget in an ingenious fashion to reclaim the victory from the jaws of defeat, overcoming his adversary and then spitting out a really good one-liner. Only that's not what happens, is it? Bond is at complete physical advantage. He's bigger, he's stronger, he's more experienced, he has righteous anger driving him. The fight is over. Bond has won. He's got the guy in a headlock, and then as a meaningless coincidence, it seems that the henchman himself biffs the watch, causing his own bionic eye to explode. Hello, Editing Sam here. If we advance frame by frame, we can actually tell pretty clearly that it's Bond who activates the watch. However, in the flow of the action, they're both wearing the same colour gloves. It's really hard to tell whose hand is who and what they're actually intentionally or unintentionally doing. This wasn't an inevitability in this situation. This is just a lack of planning and a lack of execution. Now let's just play devil's advocate for a minute. Let's entertain the notion that maybe the henchman has like a knife or a gun and he's just about to kill Bond with it. However, if we as the audience aren't provided that information, it isn't useful. At that point, we could argue that anything is beyond the reach of the frame. For all the diegetic sense that would make, he may as well be asking the camera people for help. You're really gonna let this guy strangle me, are you? So if we as the audience haven't been provided any credible way for the henchman to win, how is our experience changed by his eye exploding? And it's because of this that the scene feels less like a moment of victory and more like a frustrating coincidence, a missed opportunity. One of the most powerful tools we have as investigators in this regard is comparing and contrasting. If we want to understand why a film isn't successful in its goals, we want to look at a film that is successful in its goals. If we want for our fight scene to be successful, what we must first do is establish what is at risk for the characters. What are the stakes? In a good scene, it won't be a simple fight to the death, because on some level, even once we've suspended our disbelief, we understand that the characters probably aren't gonna die. As a consequence of this, it's important that our characters have wants and needs that can be inhibited as a consequence of this fight. In the case of Mission Impossible Fallout, what the characters are wanting to do is to capture this fella, duplicate his face, so that they can pretend to be him whilst they go and meet with the main target of this sequence. The next element that's crucial to understand as an audience member is the geography. Where are our characters? Where can they feasibly move during the course of the fight? How far are they away from each other? If we don't understand these things, we don't understand how much or how little danger they're in, and as a consequence, you can't modulate the tension. So in Mission Impossible Fallout, we've got a toilet, we've got cubicles up here, we've got sinks down here, and we've got urinals on this side. And the added advantage of this situation, by using an environment in which we're familiar, we understand what kind of stuff's in there. It's already doing a bit of the mental heavy lifting for us. Additionally, I'm already washed with waves of existential fear at the notion of having to use a public toilet. And that's where the door is. And by the way, I didn't have to look this up. I could just remember it. You want to know how I can remember it? Because the geography is so well established in the scene. For example, I know that this is the exact location that Henry Cavill reloaded his biceps and made me think things that I'm not allowed to share on YouTube. Once those things are established, all we really need to know at that point are our fighters. How good are they at fighting? What kind of advantages or disadvantages do they have? The most tension is derived when the characters are either on equal footing, so it could swing either way, or it's a David versus Goliath situation. Think, Oberyn versus the Mountain. The kind of fights that don't do well at generating tension are fights in which we understand our protagonists have a big advantage. It is both unreasonable and impossible to ask an audience to forget what they've seen earlier in the film. If they've seen a character just absolutely kick ass throughout the film, how are we expecting that audience to believe that one guy can defeat John Wick? But ultimately, what we know about the characters doesn't have to be mission critical. All that really matters is what we learn about them once the fight gets going. And then, once all of those things are established, if we really want tension, true tension in the scene, what we need is for everything to start going wrong for the protagonist. And only once they're at their lowest point can we swing the pendulum back in their favour, can we have a turning point in which the advantage is gained by our protagonist. Okay, with all that in mind, why don't we do a quick sort of back of the envelope rewrite of that scene. First, let's establish our geography. Let's say that the control panel that he's trying to get to, his ultimate goal for this scene, is up here, and that's where we have the big button that he wants to push. The door, however, is down here. A doorway with two Roman pillars on either side. He's going to enter in through this way, see his target, but then, oh no, the bad guy is going to get him from behind, giving him the immediate advantage. It's taking him by surprise. And then once we understand the stakes, Bond is trying to progress this way, but is being dragged back by the henchman, we can modulate our tension. Bond can get closer, he can be drawn away by the bad guy. And I mean, look at that. It doesn't have to be complicated. As long as we understand how our characters can feasibly move, where they can get to, are there any dangers in this room that we have to be considerate of, we can get as much tension from that as we like, to be honest. So the henchman has ambushed Bond. He's got the immediate advantage. Bond has also just battled his way up them stairs. He's extremely tired. Why don't we show that? He's out of breath. He's getting his ass kicked to Kingdom Come. And then when the henchman has Bond in the headlock, when all hope is lost, when Bond is close to unconsciousness, Bond sees his watch, remembers what he can do, remembers the henchman's robotic eye, gives the audience a moment to link the two, and then Bond purposefully hits the watch, ending the fight. And then Bond can roll away gasping, he can regain his composure a bit, he can straighten up his shirt, and then, having just created, maintained, and then released a boatload of tension, Bond can give his one-liner.
I just showed someone your watch. Really blew their mind.
Oh, and by the way, I don't want to hear anybody argue with me on this. There is no room for argument. That is one of the worst quips in any Bond film. It doesn't have to be good. Don't get me wrong, it doesn't have to be good. It just has to be, a bit more relevant. What I thought was, I'll have a think about an eye, I'll have a think about a watch, I'll think of something to do with them two things. What I came up with in about 1 second was, you should have kept a closer eye on the time. Because he's in a bit of a rush. It's really important to remember that I didn't really mention any sort of fight moves or whatnot. The fight moves are kind of incidental to the tension of a scene. They're really important for, looking cool and looking impressive. That's an important part of visual spectacle. But what we're concerned with here isn't visual spectacle, we're concerned with tension. And the tools that we use to construct and release tension are incredibly simple. And I appreciate that explanation may have been underwhelming, but the truth of the matter is that these things are incredibly simple. That is why I'm so frustrated when enormous budget films can't seem to get them right. It's filmmaking malpractice at that point. And to be honest, there's not really much else I have to say on the matter. There's plenty more that I have to say about No Time to Die, but that's more of a topic for another video. If you've enjoyed this video, make sure that you like, you subscribe, you follow, you do all of that good stuff. So I guess I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye. Say goodbye, Baxter.